The actual memorial to the site. You know, say there's a memorial like inside of, and then so around that would be with VR and other kinds of enhanced theater. You know, like scenes of the buildings collapsing, being hit. You know, all of the visuals that have been collected, because there's an enormous amount of filming, even to the ones where people jumped out the side. I mean, people said they should never show that. And I remember on 9/11, I watched people jump out of the building because they would rather die by hitting the ground rather than being burned to death inside that. And so the emotion of those people is invested in that spot. And so the sense of preserving the sanctity of that spot has got to be more than just something where you have two little square boxes and you walk around it. You know, like almost like wastebaskets. The fact that the thing imploded and in a sense made a huge hole in the ground. I wanted to take that round area. In the center of this would be a sloping curve, which would then be divided in polar axes with a logarithmic spiral, you know, an equiangular spiral that would go into the center, and that would create enough flat facets to produce the effect of infinity. When you do it with a one and a two-way mirror, and you don't see the light source and you don't see yourself, it looks like you're going into deep space. And so this would be the place where people could overlook it. There would be a huge pendulum, and there would be ways in which you could like affect this. In other words, like an exercise in psychokinesis. Because this is where loved ones died. So I suspect that there are lots of ghosts there, and they need to be treated, and that what would be nice is to get that involved in it, so that the thing wouldn't become a haunted castle. You know, in that way, where there would be a healing process. Not only for the relatives, but for the now called officially in paranormal terms the entities, you know, would be able to leave. Directly above that are five. You could call them spaces dedicated to the five continents of the earth. And what Gaudí planned for that was literally a true World Trade Center, because this is where people from those different parts of the world would bring artifacts, goods that they were building, you know, parts of their culture, you know, there's some music, their literature, you know, and they would exchange with people. They could come and see this. They could enjoy dining. You know, there'd be a theater, and so there are five proscenium theaters. You know, in the renderings, you see orchestras playing. You know, in that way, but other things could go on, and you know, you had seats for like, say, like 500 people could be in there at a time, and then there'd be plenty of room to display things. Directly above that is the plenum, where it'd have all the building systems. This would be also involved with a model of the structure of how the building is actually built, because he always did that. Now the next floor up is what would be the largest theater in the world. This is the place where they'd all want to come to have like enormous rallies. It would almost be like a small football field in there, you know, kind of a theater where there would be there'd be no columns in it, completely column free. So it would have again that egg-shaped thing where you could project imagery all around you, and so you could be doing all sorts of things in there. Okay, then immediately above that is this 400-foot, what is essentially a chapel, you know, where you have in the center, you have the this skeletal 1/6 size of the Statue of Liberty.
Now, he admired Eiffel very much, and he knew just exactly the reason why the Statue of Liberty was able to stand up, because the Statue of Liberty, the book, you know, and this thing like that, if you had a solid statue, it would just fallen over. So, Eiffel made it work because of a spiraling shear stress, meaning as that thing moved, he was able to come up with a structure that resisted that movement. Now, Gaudi used a smaller version of it with just the skeleton inside the top part of the building that was literally the chapel.
So you can actually see why the Statue of Liberty works. Surrounding that are pedestals for the for statues of the presidents of the United States, and he made places so you'd have enough. He assumed that this would go to the year 3000. So he had a sense of United States lasting in it, and this has a couple of balconies, and then at the sides, where you have the steel structure, these would be large enough so you'd have traveling elevators, and so I thought that on top of that small elevator shaft when you get out, that you'd place the sphere that used to be the symbol of the World Trade Center. You know, it was broken. It's now in a little park right near Ground Zero. You take that and you'd mount that on the top of the elevator shaft, so you could turn that into actually a sculpture base, and so you're coming out of a sculpture base and going in and then looking up and seeing it. So it would be like that sphere was resurrected in the sphere of all space. Now this is where I thought that you could start to put in some physically alive stuff, you know, with like the thing actually growing, because there's very little about that. I mean, he said, well, this should look like a sea urchin, because his whole point was to design from nature directly. This is why he is a complete precursor of biological architecture, or architecture that's physically alive. He claimed himself that he was the last true Gothic architect, and when you look at the high Gothic, those things look like vegetables made out of stone. What I anticipated, in other words, like from the base, you're starting with traditional materials, and so you've got steel, you've got reinforced concrete, shells. It would have to be made in a factory. At certain points, you'd start to get more and more towards what is like a natural thing. So that's why I was talking before about a process where you take shaped forms from a steel mesh, like strong steel mesh, and you'd place them in seawater. You know, like you'd probably go down the Hudson to where you're getting in seawater that's mixing with it, and with about 70 volts of direct current. You'd leave that in the water for a couple of months, and you take it out, and now you have a calcium carbonate shell, which is just as strong as reinforced concrete. And so that becomes the next part that goes on it as you're going to the top. And so finally, when you get to the sphere of all space, then you can start to actually get into something that is physically alive, because it's small enough to be able to use vegetative grafting techniques to make these spires come out, because and then some of the shape of the thing that you're in, so that you're actually ending up walking into a vegetable. You'd be using plastic surfaces. Butyrite is a physically alive plastic that can be grafted onto something that's alive and keep its livingness. The plant forms, there are certain plant forms that are extremely hardy that are parts of the philodendron. Now the philodendron, I found that you really can't kill those things. Like I have a philodendron growing in my studio that just popped out of its pot and dove into a big vat of water that, that doesn't drain, and it's sustaining itself.
I know where it was supposed to go, and in other words, that's part of its history, and so to build it in another location would be to vitiate the design in a very vital part. Well, there really isn't another place to do it. There isn't an open space that large where the way it was supposed to have some space around it, for the landscaping and everything to do it. I mean, it's got to go there, or I would say forget it.
The reality, I think, is literally growing, because every time I tell it to somebody, they'll say, well, gee, that sounds like a lot better idea than what I've seen. And why isn't that down in the Winter Garden with a model? So people can vote on that. And that what I think has been happening is the process that's been going on by the Lower Manhattan Development Corporation, the politicians, and very wealthy New York design firms, is that they're trying to keep out this kind of thing. In other words, a wild card is what they don't want to have happen, because this literally is like that. But I think it's making sense to people who want something that's different than what they see, because a lot of those designs looks like just another New York building, and it is not just another New York building. I mean it's a memorial. It's a revival of a historical moment. It's a connection into history that goes behind the 9/11. Because 9/11 was a national tragedy. And so the healing process of putting in something that would have been there prior to that becomes, to me, exciting. Where you've healed history itself, in the process. Something to say, the universe helps you out, right?
Yeah.
That's what people normally call painting or art. In other words, like dealing with your perception, and beefing it up, and that so that the work is an indication of how you have learned to deal with your own perception.
To date, none of Lafley's architectural designs have been executed. Hypothetically, if all of Paul Lafley's inventions were to be built, the age of postmodernism would end and a new age would begin. The Baroque would be a passage in time that combined the sensibilities of the Bauhaus and the Baroque. The Bauhaus wanted to unify the arts under architecture with the aims of creating a utopia. The Baroque also wanted to unify the arts, but as a means to transform life into theater. Baroque means utopian theater. Postmodernism is concerned with time. It's perversely fixated on fads and fashion. The Baroque will be a reaction against this. The invention of the time machine will make it an eternal age. This is a painting of what the universe will eventually become. It's the Atheopolis, an utopist community that Lafley has created out of involved mythology. Even if you don't believe what Paul Lafley says, it's important to believe in Paul Lafley. He's populated an entire universe within his head. Sometimes his world touches ours for a brief moment, in the proposal for the construction of a New York skyscraper, for example. The result is brilliant. The sheer possibility of it makes us exclaim, "What if?" It inspires our imaginations, and this is what drives our civilization another inch forward. It's important to be reminded that Paul Lafley is not an extraterrestrial. He's as human as anyone else. We all start out with the same amount of information, but Paul simply chooses to take it a little further.
Jesus. Wow. It's a spontaneous Kundalini rise.
Explain that. What?
Well, I mean that in your in your back, near the spinal column is winding these psychic channels. The Ida, the Pingala, and the Sushumna. It's the third channel. And what they do is they surround the major chakras of the body. And so when the chi energy or the ki or whatever you want to call it, prana, it comes through. In other words, sometimes it rushes. And so what it does, it creates a wave form. And so your entire spine operates like a wave. Because if it didn't, there would be so many things that would break your spine. Like if you hit, it waves and it takes the impact. So this is the same thing.